we've run down the clock. Hopefully that was useful. Okay, I'm getting a nod. I like the nods of support. Thank you, Mary. Okay, this process is as new to me as it is to you. From my experience teaching, I do believe that while this might take us a while for this instance, I think we'll get better at this. Okay, so I'm not too worried yet that we're so far behind on time. We'll catch it up, okay? Saying that, we will, Art, we will. Okay, these are also the most important recommendations in one regard, because they're the ones that are probably going to be the front and center ones. So it's okay to have spent the time on them. It's important. With that now, I think the best strategy on advice is to take this in the sections that we have them on our documents. And so then we open it to the floor and we talk about recommendations 1 to 16 in this first section. And hands up as to what table wants to first propose an amendment, an addition or deletion to this. You will propose it, thank you Kenneth, on table 10, and you're proposing it on behalf of the table. You propose it and we vote on it. So Kenneth, thank you for starting the ball rolling.
It's going on the... Okay, the one is on 13. So the current one is the state should take action to drastically reduce the use of pesticides. We proposed the use of pesticides. The state should incentivize the use of naturally friendly alternatives while regulating the use of domestic and industrial chemicals. And this should coincide with the improvement of schemes for the,
Oh, sorry, Kenneth, thank you for that.
It's my handwriting.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Well.
Sorry. To reduce the use of pesticides, the state should incentivise the use of natural, cost-friendly alternatives while regulating the domestic use of chemical pesticides. This should coincide with the approval of schemes for the safe disposal of unused hazardous materials as well as their containers. So that's to replace number 13.
Okay.
Sorry.
And, sorry, Nick, hold on. Okay. So is there any comment on this particular amendment? And I see these hands, and so we'll give the microphone to Emma on that.
Hiya, we just proposed to add, we agree with your change, we're happy with that, but we just would like to add, you said chemical pesticides, we'd like fertilisers added to that as well, chemical fertilisers.
Fertilisers and pesticides.
Yeah.
Now, I just need to ask in the room, who is taking down those particular wording? Whose job is that? That's Cahill. Okay, yeah. So we'll get it's okay, we'll get the wording. And okay, so thank you, 10. And over here to table 4, please. Thank you.
What we had agreed here was that the state should take action to reduce the use of pesticides while recognising the need to maintain food security.
Okay, so can I suggest, or can I ask, if what you have suggested with the acknowledgement of food security could be added on to 10 and what this table 8 also suggested? Would that be agreeable? Okay, so I'm going to need to find a way of viewing all that in a second.
We have all of that, so that's all.
Okay.
Just put the question to Brendan.
And Brendan, can I get a microphone to Brendan, please? Thank you.
Sorry, just a point of clarification. We specifically wanted, and we sought expert advice on this, the phrase chemical fertilisers added, because it doesn't include natural fertilisers.
Okay, so that's chemical specifically used in the phrasing of this as well. Okay, thank you, Brendan. And table 1, can we get a microphone to table 1, please?
Just on fertilizers and pesticides, I mean, they're two different things. And bear in mind that the organic people use chemical fertilizers. And the only difference with the organic people is they allow extracted chemical fertilizers as opposed to processed chemical fertilizers.
Okay.
So it's a big area.
Okay, hold on now, because this is where the room can get a bit of a disarray. I take that point, Jean. Well, let's go over the wording again with it, and then we'll take a vote on it. Can I go back to table 10, or is there a way for me to look at the wording? Sorry, this is where I think it's going to take us a little bit of time to get the rhythm on this properly. And maybe we have another chair up here. Okay, so this is where we'll iron out this process now, but what we have is something like this, and we'll word it in again. The state should take action to drastically reduce the use of to reduce the use of pesticides. The state should incentivize the use of natural, cost-friendly alternatives while regulating the domestic use of chemical pesticides and fertilizers. This should coincide with the approval of schemes for the safe disposal of unused hazardous materials, as well as their containers, and incorporate food security, or the need to maintain food security, which should go in there after fertilizers. I know this is... can we get the microphone to Nicole on table 2, please?
Dave.
Okay.
Herbicides should be added to that as well.
Okay.
So herbicides are almost worse than pesticides.
Okay.
Or they'd be used more in domestic situations.
So chemical pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers. Okay. Hilary in table 9. Wait a second. Mike, wait a second. Okay.
No, just on that point, we were talking about that pesticides, herbicides, and then you have fungicides as well, and you can go on and on and on with that. So you just need to be, you know what I mean?
Okay. Can I throw to the back of the room? James, is there one word that we use for all of these things? If I can get a microphone to James, please.
Yeah, pesticide is the overarching word that covers herbicide, fungicides, and insecticides.
Great, okay.
So pesticides is the word to cover all them three. Yeah.
Thank you very much, James. Okay, with that
It
in
doesn't
mind...
include fertilizer, though. It doesn't include chemical
So
fertilizer.
we have pesticides and fertilizers. We'll keep that in mind. Hold on a second. Get a microphone to table 1, please. Wait, NASA, hold on. We have to get a microphone to you.
You know, take on board whatever they're saying, but maybe James could spend the next 2 seconds or 2 minutes putting a word in that maybe that would encapsulate all what we've done rather than going through paragraphs and paragraphs. You know, just make it more simple, but if we could have another recommendation from him that would encapsulate what the points came across, we could vote on that.
I think we have it, NASA, now. I think what we have that encapsulated. Okay. Do I need to read it out again, though, is the question. Maybe Cathal should sit up here with us. This is a bit messy. Sorry, everybody. I don't think anything has been as detailed as this, so we'll put it on the screen. That's the best thing. Thank you.
So, you want to move on?
Okay. While we're getting the new wording of 13 up on the screen, what is the next recommendation from this first section that we will go through? And we'll get the microphone down to table number 2. Thank you.
This is for recommendation 11. It's just a change on the implementation of it. So the wording we're proposing is, the state must work with key stakeholders to review Ireland's cheap food policy in the context of the biodiversity crisis, particularly in agriculture and marine sectors. This review must make recommendations taking into consideration vulnerable sectors of the population and ensure reasonable standards of living, and result in a plan to address these issues. Thank you.
Okay, can I just ask, and result in a plan to, address these issues. You said to make recommendations on. What does that mean? This review must take into...
Sorry, just the fear is that this review will not be implemented.
Yes, so I think is your wording to change the second sentence. This review must take
Yeah.
into consideration vulnerable sections of the population and ensure reasonable standards of living and result in a plan to address these issues.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I heard something else in there. With that amendment, can I get a show of hands if the room is happy with that addition to number 11? Well, that's the majority of the room. That's carried. Thank you, table number 2. Is there another recommendation? So, table, I can't see your tables, I'm sorry. 8, yeah. Brendan, yeah.
We'd like to make a change to number 9. I'll read out the recommendation as it is. People in primary production industries, examples farming and fishing, should be encouraged to implement practices that conserve biodiversity and be paid for biodiversity enhancement and associated ecosystem service provision. We would like the phrase "and be paid" to be changed to "and be incentivized."
Okay, that suggested amendment. Would the room like to, all in favour, hands up? Okay, that's carried, thank you. Sorry, table 1, sorry. Robert, sorry.
Yeah, it's just a further amendment to the
Yeah.
same one, yep, okay.
I should have asked, sorry, Robert.
Okay, where are we going then? Which number are we at? 9, is it? Yeah.
Mhm.
We want to remove the example farming and fishing and for it to read, people in primary production industries should implement practices and continue as normal then.
So people in primary production industries should be encouraged to, should implement practices.
Yeah.
That, okay.
That's her suggestion.
Okay.
So basically it'll read, people in primary industries should implement practices that conserve biodiversity and be paid for biodiversity, and incentivize for biodiversity enhancement and associated ecosystem
Okay,
services.
thank you, Robert. To remove "be encouraged to" from that statement, can I get a show of hands? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Another recommendation from this first section. Keith, 4.
No worries. Yeah, this is just on point 16. I think it's there should be active identification of good practice and the potential to replicate on a wider scale with infrastructure and funding put in place to support replication of proven good practice in partnership with those who have developed such practices, e.g. the Burn Project, the Bride Project and the Suez Project.
Burren, Bride, and Suez. Okay. So, with the addition of that wording in partnership with those who've developed such practices in 16, all those in favour? And all those against? Okay, it's carried then. Okay, thank you. Any other recommendations from this first section? Okay, table 13.
This is just going back to number 11, removing the word cheap, because I think it'll just act as a lightning rod for critics of the whole document, and it kind of gives it an attitude of, we want to make food more expensive, and I think a lot of people would react with hostility to that. So a proposed alternative wording would be, instead of cheap food policy, to be food provision policy.
Sorry, so I take, and so to respond to 13, table 4. Is that on?
Instead of saying cheap food policy, current food policy.
Okay, and I'm going to, Hillary's on 9.
Can I just clarify what's the correct technical term for the cheap food policy from the experts? Because it's governed, my understanding is by decisions that were made in the EU whenever.
Micheál or James, would you like to speak to that? So Micheál O'Brien, perhaps?
I think the exact wording in the European policy is affordable food. But the thing is, everyone wants their food affordable, but the problem is that 50, 60 years ago, we were spending 80% of our income on food. Today in Ireland, for example, I think it's 15, 16 or 17% of our income on food. So, and the price of food that the farmer is receiving hasn't changed much in the last 20 or 30 years. So how to capture that in a phrase? It's you still want to have affordable food, and when I mentioned this point, I was saying at the same time it needed to be underpinned by a social security structure so that nobody wasn't able to afford food and they had nutritious food to eat. So it's not about making food more expensive. So I get that point from the table. So maybe cheap is the wrong word, but I don't think affordable grasps it either. So this isn't helping, I know. But maybe Micheál would have
Micheál, please, and then I'll see those hands, Brendan and Robert. Yeah.
I take the point, and the colleagues over there, on the word cheap will be misunderstood and misinterpreted. It's really about food policy from farm to fork, the balance between affordability and quality. I mean, it's a core objective of the Common Agriculture Policy is to actually ensure affordability of food and farmers' incomes. So I think cheap is a bit of a word that will actually be misinterpreted outside this room. So if anything, affordability, and it's really a balancing act between affordability and meeting biodiversity objectives.
Okay, thank you, Micheál. I can suggest something in a moment, but Brendan, Robert and Dan. So 8 first.
Sorry, I appreciate what people are saying about the negativity, potential negativity of cheap food policy, but it is a widely understood phrase, and I think the farming community as well would like to get away from the cheap food policy and be properly compensated for their efforts. So it may actually sound a bit negative, but we need to be a little bit radical, and we need to engender some debate, and maybe having an anodyne word like, nice food policy is not going to work. So this is sort of a high-level recommendation that needs to capture people's attention.
Okay.
So I would like to keep it as it is.
Thank you, Brendan. Robert, is this suggesting? Yeah.
Yeah, and our suggested amendment is quite simple. Remove the word cheap and say Ireland's food policy.
Okay.
That was our suggestion.
But we can go back to table 4s and say Ireland's current food policy, potentially. Dan, table 6.
Yeah, I think the term cheap food policy is probably something that's recognised because we've been used to hearing it over the couple of weeks, but it is a kind of a term that is known across the board. I would like to keep it, but maybe the word underpriced could encapsulate cheap and might be a more appropriate word if people are uncomfortable with the word cheap.
Okay, I'm going to take my role as the 100th member now to suggest something, to say potentially the state must work with key stakeholders to review Ireland's current food policy in the context of the biodiversity crisis, particularly in agriculture and marine sectors, to balance between the quality and affordability of food. This review must take into consideration vulnerable sections of the population and ensure reasonable living standards of living, and result in a plan to address this issue. So it's to replace cheap with current, is what I'm hearing. And do we add in balance? Sorry, let's just take a vote on to replace cheap with current. A show of hands. Is that a majority? Vote against? Okay, it's a majority to remove cheap and put into current food policy. Do we need to incorporate the wording to balance between quality and affordability? I don't take it personally. A show of hands to include balance between quality and affordability of food. Okay, thank you, that's carried. So now, do we have the wording of 11? Thank you, Cathal, brilliant. Great. Now, we're finding our rhythm, okay. Is this to respond to this wording, Kenneth? Can we get a microphone to Kenneth? I feel like we need microphones on everyone now.
Stakeholders, that's the biggest problem, is the retailers. I'm coming from, I'm involved in that industry, and it's retailers who are the problem.
Okay, Kenneth, I'm going to stop you there, though. Are you going to suggest an amendment to it?
It's just the stakeholders, with key stakeholders. I think everyone needs primary producers, state, NGOs and retailers. Everyone, not...
So do you want to include the state must work with key stakeholders, including retailers? Or all stakeholders?
All stakeholders.
Okay. Okay. So a vote to replace key stakeholders with all stakeholders. All in favour? Okay, it's all stakeholders. Thank you, Kenneth. Great. We're getting somewhere now. Okay, further recommendation or further amendments to this section. Oh, 13 is ready now. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. So, instead of what we had, which was a one line, now, the Assembly suggests to reduce the use of pesticides, the state should incentivise the use of natural, cost-friendly alternatives while regulating the domestic use of chemical pesticides and fertilisers. We're taking out herbicides because pesticides includes herbicides. We can put that in a note somewhere. This should coincide with the approval of schemes for the safe disposal of unused hazardous materials as well as their containers, and while maintaining food security. I think we can put food security after fertilisers. And sorry, James. We need more microphones. Do you know what? Could we take a microphone?
Yeah, Micheál brought this to my attention here. The farm to fork strategy, as part of the European Green Deal, has a target already that Ireland has signed up to reduce by 50% the use and risk of chemical pesticides by 2030. And target 2 is to reduce by 50% the use of more hazardous pesticides by 2030. And also to reduce the use of fertilizer by 20% by 2030.
Oh, then do we
illegal.
Include the wording?
Proposal. Yeah, it's a proposal by the European Commission.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest then, in response to that, James, do we put in at the beginning of this recommendation, in line with the EU farm to fork strategy?
Yeah.
To reduce the state should reduce, the state must reduce the use of something like that. Is that what we should include here then? I don't know why I'm asking. Okay. NASA. Take a vote on that.
Yeah, I quite like all of that, but I'm just thinking, I like the idea where we said we have to drastically reduce it. By putting all this in, we're saying we're not actually using and portraying that we really think pesticides should be actually drastically reduced. We're putting in line with this. I think maybe we just put a statement that pesticides have to be drastically reduced, and to deal with this, we should do this. I don't think we're actually setting out how drastic pesticides are what damage they're causing. Yeah, and I think it's just there should be another one-liner that it needs to be drastically reduced and whatever after that. But we need to emphasise they have to be very much reduced.
So can you put that into a succinct wording, Nessa? Is it the original? We just keep the original proposal, keep the original line in there and add the rest of it?
I think you just put the first line in and then go on from there.
Okay. Now we've got two table 10.
You could just put drastically into between 2 and reduce, and it would take in the first line that we originally had and then brings it back into the new one. So in line with the farm to fork strategy, to drastically reduce the use of pesticides, and then that brings the strength back into the sentence, but puts in the detail that people are looking for.
Okay, thank you. Sheila, table 4.
Sorry, just when we put in the farm to fork, those targets aren't really drastic though. So
okay.
So if we're using them as that, we can't use both.
Okay, well, can we? Let's delete that then.
Well, I would prefer the drastic.
Yeah.
I would.
Okay, Cathal, can you take that out, and then we'll just take a vote on the drastically part, I think. Sorry. Yeah, Control Alt. So take out the in line with the farm to fork strategy. To drastically reduce the use of pesticides, the state should incentivise. So we can acknowledge somewhere else that the state has already signed up to some things. We're going to break the computer. Okay. Yeah, okay. Is to take a vote on that now, to drastically reduce is in there again. Show of hands, please. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Another recommendation or another amendment to this section. Brendan, table 8, please.
Sorry, I'd just like to suggest that we put in the word also in terms of the domestic thing, because otherwise it sort of nearly suggests that, I mean, the biggest use of pesticides, chemical fertilizers and etc. is in agriculture, but we're nearly skewing the thing towards domestic. Yeah, I agree, domestic is important, but we need to, and I'm not too sure about we should incentivize. I mean, it should be reduced in line with the EU proposed policy, not we should incentivize it. I mean, we should do it. Right?
But the room has decided on the incentivised part, Brendan, already.
Sorry.
Okay. Okay. Is that okay? Table 12.
Hi. How about we just remove the domestic and say, while also regulating use of chemical pesticides, etc., to keep it broader?
Okay. And Ken, to respond to that point?
Okay, I'm the one who came up with it. Okay. I walk into my agri store, I can buy, I have to tell them, give my herd number and record exactly where I spread it, the rate. I have to store the storage in a safe bung everywhere. Then I can walk into Woody's anywhere, buy off the shelf, plus I have to have training done, and my sprayer has to be calibrated, so know exactly, there's buffer zones everywhere. But I, on a Saturday morning, decide to do a bit of gardening, walk into any shop, buy off the shelf, I can spread it anywhere I want, with no rates, no recording anywhere, and there's no regulation. And I think it's important, and also tidy towns, everyone else in the domestic.
Okay, thank you, Kenneth. I'm going to take this. To drastically reduce the use of pesticides, the state should incentivise for domestic and industrial use natural, cost-friendly alternatives, while also regulating the use of chemical pesticides and fertilisers and maintaining food security. How about that? The state should incentivise the domestic and industrial use of natural, cost-friendly alternatives. I feel like we want to go back on, okay, all right. We'll come back to 13 in a little while, okay? I think we need to take a break from it. Okay, try and get over the line. To drastically reduce the use of pesticides, the state should incentivise the domestic and industrial use of natural, cost-friendly alternatives to chemical pesticides and fertilisers. No, I'm reading that wrong. Cost-friendly alternatives while also regulating the use of, there's where the commas are, chemical pesticides and fertilisers and maintaining food security. I don't like the maintaining food security. While also maintaining food security. This should coincide with the improving of schemes for the safe disposal of unused hazardous materials, as well as their containers. Okay, this is better. We may need to just comment on it again. Robert, is this... Okay, go on, yeah.
No, that's completely wrong, sorry.
Okay.
But no, because you're actually incentivising the use, that's what that reads. You're saying incentivise the use in domestic and
yes,
but that's not what we want to do.
No. Okay, this is what I mean. I want to go away from it just now. We just need a quiet moment with that sentence, and we'll show it up again in a couple of minutes. I'd like a quiet moment with that now. Microphone.
Hi, I kind of think the use of pesticides has two areas of use. Like in agriculture, it's necessary in certain areas, but like in a domestic setting, possibly it isn't necessary. So I think that this should be separated into a food security topic and the use of it domestically or in to keep things looking pretty. Like, so I think it's a separate thing altogether. Like, we definitely individually need to use less pesticides to maintain things to look pretty, but farmers need a certain amount of it. So for me, it's a separate recommendation.
Okay, I think I'm just going to break from this now because we might need to just all think about it for a couple of minutes. Allow me that freedom, and I promise we'll come back to this later on. Is there anything else in this section? Okay, number 1.
Acknowledging the varied landscapes across the island of Ireland. I think acknowledging is a very woolly and passive word, and I would recommend the following. Our table have Ireland's varied landscapes must be supported and appropriate monitoring systems designed to suit their local environment. It's very much the same, but it's just more stronger.
Yeah. Okay. All in favour of... Can you say it again, Nessa?
Yeah. Ireland's varied landscapes must be supported and appropriate monitoring systems designed to suit their local environment.
All in favour? Great. Thank you. Carried. Responses to... Sorry, Emma?
Sorry, just to add to that one, supported and monitored. Is that up there?
Yeah.
Supported and appropriate monitoring. Yeah, okay, sorry.
Okay. Table 4.
Could we add there, just a complete add, higher incentives and support should be provided to those who prioritise the preservation and restoration of rare and threatened species.
Sorry, where is this,
So
Sheila?
to go on the end of that one.
At the end of 14?
Yeah.
Okay.
So higher incentives / support should be provided to those who prioritise the preservation and restoration of rare and threatened species. Prioritise the preservation and restoration of rare and threatened species.
We'll fix this up in a minute, yeah. Yeah. Provided to those who... Okay. Show of hands. All in favour of this extra line? Sorry, show of hands? Yeah, okay, that's the room. Okay, thank you. Carried. Okay, other additions to this section? Table 1, Robert?
It's not just me, by the way, just the whole table.
Yeah.
But back at number 8, we mentioned not limiting to national networks. If we're saying we're not limited, we think we should remove it. So what we're suggesting is, as a matter of urgency, areas and species of high nature value should be protected.
Right.
So from high nature value,
so
remove the reference to the Natura 2000 sites. Should be protected. Now, we know that might be controversial.
Well,
so
we get to vote on it now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so do people agree with the removal of the the National Network of Natura sites and protected species?
Should be protected.
All those in favour?
Just wait till it's fully there now. Yeah.
Okay. All those against? Not carried. Okay. This is it in action. Thank you, Table 1.
Democracy, huh?
This is democracy. As Art said, yeah, the line, the people have spoken. More recommendations or more changes to this section, please. Table 9. Gary.
Hi there. Just wondering about number 15, because we're wondering about the essence of that one is about our global responsibility. So we were thinking about changing the wording of it completely because it just sounded a little bit unclear about what we were trying to say. So we wanted to say Ireland needs to recognise its global responsibility in terms of our consumerism, resource usage, and international biodiversity was the change.
Gary, can you repeat that again, please?
Seamus.
Seamus, sorry. What did I think you were called, Gary? That's Gary, sorry. Oh, my God. Oh, that's so bad. I do apologise. Sorry, Seamus. Can you say it again, please?
So Ireland needs to recognise its global responsibility in terms of our consumerism, our resource usage, and our international biodiversity. Because we were unclear about what the meaning of it was to begin with. And we thought it was more about our global responsibility.
Is that to replace the first sentence or
Yeah.
all of it?
All of it.
To replace the whole thing? Okay.
Yeah.
And delete the first part of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Seamus.
Thanks.
Ireland needs to recognise its global responsibility in terms of our consumerism, our resource usage, and our international biodiversity responsibilities. Yes. Okay. To respond to this, anything? Okay. Show of hands to agree to this new wording. All in favour? Okay. That's carried. Thank you. Okay. Anything else in this section? Micheál? I don't think you're allowed to propose an amendment. No, I know you're responding to it. Thank you.
It's just
One
a
second,
comment. Just going back to something, the amendment that was made on number 14 was a good amendment, but it just took out the only reference that was there to the island of Ireland. Right?
Okay.
And I just want to point that out. It would be a shame to lose that. If you take it out there, I suggest that we might try and find a way of putting it in, at least in the area later in this session, on biodiversity research and data, that it should be done on an all-island basis. We've dropped it here, let's not drop it and cross the whole paper. That's the comment I'm making.
Okay, thank you, Micheál, and I appreciate that. However, I cannot put it forward because it has to come from the members, but we'll take that into account in suggestions for rewording. Hilary, table 9.
Can I just propose we look at the text in 14 and put in on the island of Ireland?
Yeah, that's how this works. Thank you. So, Ireland's varied landscapes across the island must be supported in appropriate blah, 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 blah. Sorry, I don't mean that. It's a very important recommendation. Sorry. Donna, on table 6.
Hi, just on 15. I don't think we should lose the...
Sorry, I thought, is this to respond to 14 before we vote on that amendment? No, sorry, I'll just take that in a second. So, to include across the island, that wording, can we have a show of hands, all in favour? Great, carried, thank you. Sorry, now Donna, 15.
Sorry.
Don't apologise.
On 15, so I don't think we should lose the one-size-fits-all approach is no longer feasible because different places do need different measures. So I kind of think that maybe put that in at the end again.
So Ireland needs to recognise its global responsibility in terms of our consumerism, our resource usage and our international biodiversity responsibilities. A one-fits-all approach is no longer feasible. I'm not sure it works there now though. Hilary, your hand is up, but Keith also had his hand up on table 4, so we'll go to Keith first. Is this to respond to this? Yeah, okay, Keith, thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, I think the Act Local...
Can you stand up? Sorry, Keith,
yeah.
thank you, just
Losing
for the cameras.
the Act Local, if you tie that back in, it'll probably take care of that as well. So Ireland needs to recognise its global responsibility in its local actions in terms of our consumerism, our resource usage and our international biodiversity responsibilities. So I think keeping local actions in, I think, is important.
So your suggestion is responsibility in terms of responsibility, comma, through our local actions or just through our local actions? Okay. Thank you. Dan and... sorry, yeah. And then we'll take
just on the
various
last
votes
line,
on that.
the one-size-fits-all approach is no longer feasible. It was never feasible, so it should be as not appropriate.
Okay.
Is that fair enough?
Yeah. Okay. Hilary, table 9.
Yeah, and I suppose this was probably what started the conversation. We weren't clear about the one-size-fits-all. What were we talking about? what one size fits, what does it refer to? And that was in the original text as much as anything. So that was why, when we read the original text, we were going, what is the one size approach they're talking about in this paragraph?
If it's for a single policy approach?
It's probably just I mean, this recommendation came from the tables, but my understanding is that the one-size-fits-all was trying to centralise a single national policy to cover all cases, and that's no longer appropriate. We need to be specific for specific situations, that's all.
Okay, and it's just, we felt that if we couldn't understand what it meant after being in this room, that sending it to government, so we need to be careful how we word it.
This is messy now, but while I think a one-size-fits-all policy approach is not appropriate, is important to put in, I think we have it, and I'll check now in a minute, I think we have it later in terms of agriculture stuff. If with the rewording that we originally agreed, suggested by Seamus, is going to go in there, a one-size-fits-all policy approach in terms of global stuff, I'm not sure it fits here. And I'm just saying that as chair now, I don't know if this makes sense, but I understand the reasoning to want to put it back in, Donna, but I'm not sure if this is the line to put it in. But what does the room feel about it? Should we include the last sentence, and with that, through our local actions? Potentially, yeah, okay. Okay, so how do we deal with this? So let's just vote on 15. Does the room agree with including the last sentence in this one-size-fits-all policy approach is not appropriate? All in favour? Against? Okay, so we'll take it out here, but we may put it back in somewhere else. Just the line, not the whole thing. Okay, and is it still appropriate to include through our local actions? All in favour of keeping through our local actions? All in favour? Okay, and that's keeping in there. Great. Excellent, thank you, Tim. Okay, to go to 13, should we give this to Cathal, or I'll call it out first? Okay. In order to drastically reduce the use of pesticides, the state should incentivise the domestic and industrial use of natural, cost-friendly alternatives. It should also regulate the use of chemical pesticides and fertilisers while maintaining food security. This should coincide with the improvement of schemes for the safe disposal of unused hazardous materials as well as their containers. Thank you, Tim. Let's give that to Cathal. I think that makes sense now. That's what we need, somebody to put some clarification. This is the sausage making I talked about last week. No one should see how policy is written. No one. 8. Brendan, microphone, please.
Yeah, I think it's very well worded now, but I just think it says drastically reduce the use of pesticides in line with the EU proposed policy, because that will actually give specific targets, 20, 30, whatever %. It makes more sense to get things done that way.
Okay, so just to take that point, Brendan, Sheila's point earlier was, are they ambitious enough? But your point is, it gives it a measure that we've already signed up to. Okay, so the suggestion for the amendment here is to add in line with the EU policy, and we'll name it. Okay, so all in favour of that? Sorry. Okay, sorry, let me just... Rebecca, is this to follow up on Brendan's point? Yeah, okay.
It was just to suggest beyond what's the EU recommend or the EU legislation.
Okay, so this is where, let's just take that now. Okay, and we'll take Michal's point on this, and then before we go to clarify it. Thank you, Michal.
Thanks. Just to be clear, the EU Farm to Fork, it's a proposed piece of legislation that's coming forward, and that is a 50% reduction by 2030. That's extremely ambitious, because we're now actually on the verge of 2023. So that's in the next 7 years, a 50% reduction. It also, and I think something that you need to consider, it also has a very strong focus on agriculture, where that's the, think about it in terms of biodiversity, that's where the greatest impact of use of pesticides is. It's in agricultural landscapes, and I think you need to be careful not to overlook that point, because some people might not interpret industrial as including agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, Micheál. And I'm just making eye contact with Rebecca to say it's okay to cut that. And so now we'll go with the in line with the EU policy, and we will name that policy. All in favour of including this addition in bold that Brendan suggested? All in favour? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Great, we got 13. Well done, everybody. That was a team effort. Okay, yeah, that's only 3. Oh no. Okay. Is this a recommendation on another one? Hilary, what are you doing? Okay, get the microphone. Just give Hilary the microphone, and then we'll come to Adele in 7.
Sorry, just picking up on the point about the use of the word industrial. I think there's probably some consideration of that, incentivise domestic, and I mean industrial. Do people understand that to include agriculture in general in the room?
Okay, so what's the amendment?
Just to propose another word instead of industrial, because...
And what's the other word? Commercial, okay. Should incentivise the domestic and commercial use. So all in favour of commercial versus industrial. Okay, that's carried. Thank you, Hilary. Was there another one? Robert, and then Adele had her hand up over here.
Sorry, number 14 again.
No, let's stay on 13 for a moment. Okay, Adele, is this for 13?
It's a good one.
Different? Okay, sorry, go on, 14, yeah.
14, yeah. We've mentioned landscapes. We've seemed to have forgotten about the seas. So
Excellent.
I think it should be Ireland's varied land and seascapes across and around the island.
Okay, sorry, I shouldn't have said excellent, swaying the
That's my
room.
proposal.
All in favour? Okay, great, thank you. Table 7. Thank you. Table 1.
Just for number 5, we wanted to change the wording of a vision to a plan, just because we think this is a bit religious. We'd like something a bit more tangible, I think. Should have said that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I think I put in vision because I think they need a vision. Like they need an oversight, but I guess it mightn't be the right word. So replace vision with plan in 5. All in favour? Okay. Is that a carry? Can I get hands up again? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. It's a plan. Okay, so the state must provide and communicate a plan for the conservation and restoration of biodiversity for the benefit of its people. It must be upheld and adopted across all government departments. I mean, if they just did that in and of itself, would be grand. Okay, anything else in this section? Janie. Robert? Yes, table 1, please. I mean, thank you.
Sorry, but can we not just say the state must provide, communicate, and implement a plan?
Yeah.
Because they can just throw a plan on the table.
Okay, so the wording is state must provide, communicate, and implement a plan. All in favour? Okay, great, carried. Okay, how are we on this section? Anything else on this first section of document A? This is great fun. Okay, okay, wonderful. We're moving to strategy. Okay, S1 to S8. How are we? Oh, sorry, Mary. Mary has her hand up. Can we get, sorry, yeah.
Sorry, just from a sort of drafting perspective for number 15 about the global action, global responsibilities, local action, including local action. Just it makes sense.
Sorry, Ireland needs to recognise its global responsibility, including our local.
Including through local action.
Okay. Again, would anyone like to? Is there anyone who wants to suggest that? Ailish, table 7. Okay. Thank you, Ailish, for suggesting this amendment. Ireland needs to recognise its global responsibility, including through our local actions in terms of consumerism resources. Lovely. Okay. All in favour? Carried. Thank you very much, Ailish and Mary. Okay. Great. We're on to strategy. Recommendations from the room. Table 6, Dan. And then we'll come to table 2. Oh, great. 7 minutes.
S6, where it talks about the number of biodiversity officers in each local authority area. I think you should read that each local authority must have dedicated biodiversity officers, and the number being determined by the population density, so that you don't have one for the 4 in each borough in Dublin. And
do you know what I'm going to ask? Do you have that wording there? Can you just give that to Cathal for a second? Thank you. Or to Tim. Yeah, and Tim will give that to Carl, and we'll vote on it in a minute when we see it. Is that okay, Dan? Thank you. Table 2?
Yeah, sorry, mine was the same as that.
Oh, it's same.
Very similar.
Very similar. Grant. So we'll vote on that in a second. Table 8, Emma?
Hiya, just to add full-time dedicated biodiversity officers.
Great, and we'll vote on that one now in a second. Perfect. Oh my gosh. Okay, are we on strategy? Table 9? Elaine?
Hi, we actually just wanted to make a consideration. Actually, do you want to give it because you're wording? Okay.
Fiona, sorry.
We were hoping to add that the amount of biodiversity officers might be proportionate to the land mass or amount of habitat. So one in each local authority might not be appropriate.
Yeah, that's what we have in this upcoming wording now.
Sorry.
Not at all. No, it's not.
We
You haven't
agree.
seen it yet. Perfect. Is there any other ones? Because I think we'll finesse 6 in a second. Hilary, a different strategy one?
Yeah. S2. Just there must be a whole of state approach to drafting and implementing a new statutory national biodiversity plan. And I just wanted to query if we should put in brackets after that aligned with the climate action plan, because I just fear that you go off and draft a whole biodiversity one, and if you don't look at it aside the climate action plan, that there might be conflicts emerge. So
okay, so your suggestion is to
put in
aligning
brackets aligned with the climate action plan.
Okay, all in favour of that amendment? Great, thank you. That is carried. Sheila?
Sorry, we have one for S2 that I've just deleted. No, so in the second sentence, this and subsequent. So this and subsequent plans must not be constrained by electoral cycles and should have clearly defined ecological targets, in brackets, i.e. the number of species on the list, the numbers of species on the at-risk list is halved.
Okay, we might just bring that wording up to Cathal. Thank you. Great. Table 5.
Just on that one as well.
Tony?
This and subsequent plans must not be constrained by electoral cycles and should have clearly defined ecological targets with appropriate monitoring.
Okay. How are we going on that now? Looks like that makes sense. Okay. So there must be a whole of state approach to drafting and implementing a new statutory national biodiversity action plan aligned with the climate action plan, supported by legislation and properly funded. This and subsequent plans must not be constrained by electoral cycles. It should have clearly defined ecological targets, e.g. the number of species on the at-risk list is halved, with appropriate monitoring and timelines to which all parties at national, regional and local levels are fully committed. There's a lot of detail in there. It's good. Okay. Have we agreement on adding in ecological targets? All in favour? Okay, with appropriate monitoring, all in favour? Okay, thank you everyone. That's 2 done. Can we go back to 6 now, please? Thank you. Each local authority should have 1 full-time dedicated biodiversity officer, the number which should be determined by population density and environmental and land mass, okay. By population density and land mass. Okay. In favour of this amendment? All in favour? Okay. It's carried. Okay, let me just come over to table 5. Yeah.
Hello, Paul's my name. I just think at least 1 should be put in. Each local authority should have at least 1 full-time dedicated biodiversity officer.
So, Paul, is this to include in the second line somewhere?
Each local authority should have at least 1 full-time dedicated officer.
Right. At least 1 full-time dedicated biodiversity officer. total number of which should be determined by, does that make sense then? Okay, thank you. So, yeah. And coast, okay. So, we'll take a vote on this one. First of all, at least one full-time dedicated biodiversity officer. All in favour? Okay. And now, amendment here in table 2 is to add in, like we have that there. Okay, I think we don't need to take a vote on that, do we? Well, all in favour to the coast. Okay, great. Now, another amendments from table 1. David had his hand up, and then NASA.
It's about S5. Oh yeah. Have we?
I just go as we're on 6. Sorry, don't be bossy. But I just think, I know you told us off about this, but I think we should have each local authority must have at least one rather than.
Oh, I didn't tell you off. I just said we could do a replace all.
I think it has to be must.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Whoa. Okay. Table 6, Dan, and then sorry, David. Then the floor is back to you. We'll go to Dan because this is on. You can keep the microphone with him. Yeah, there's 3 microphones doing the rounds now.
Just on 6, if you put in at least one, local authorities will say we only have to have one. They will aim for the minimum.
We just voted on it, Dan, though, and it carried. Sorry. Okay. I'm moving back to David now. Okay.
Yeah, mine's for S5, and it's in addition to recent developments in judicial structures, the state must develop an environmental court or equivalent at high court, circuit and district levels. I'd like to add to uphold the rights of the environment and the rights of people, to hold policymakers and the citizens to account.
Yes. Can I just ask, though, can we vote on that without voting on if we're going to put the rights of nature into law, first of all?
Just to indicate that there are 2 sets of rights here at stake, and that the court is not just to uphold one and not the other.
Okay.
So I'd be happy with just the, hold policymakers and citizens to account.
Okay, we'll take that wording, David, and we'll put it up. If you want, can you give that? Yeah. Do you have the notes for that wording?
Yeah.
And we'll give that to, so to hold policymakers and citizens to account.
Does that suffice? Yep, that's good enough for me.
Okay, all in favour of including in order to hold policymakers and citizens to account? So can I just vote on that first? So comment on this directly, Hilary? Okay, go on.
Sorry, it's just while we're on this one, I think we should be very clear on what we're asking for. We're saying in addition to recent developments in judicial structures, which I presume is a reference to the planning court that's been announced, and there's 15 High Court judges dedicated to planning going forward. Are we saying in addition, or are we saying that those structures must incorporate environmental decisions? And maybe do we need an expert view on this? I just want to make sure we're very clear on what we're actually recommending when there is 15 planning officers that will be coming up, 15 planning judges that will be coming on. Surely there's some expertise there. I don't know if someone's able to
Fiona, I
give us
think
the
that
view
was
on that.
in addition to the recent developments, that's where it is. So Kenneth, you have something to say specifically to that point, and then we might ask Mary to come in. Yeah.
Citizens, what about businesses and corporate what about business, we're letting businesses and other identities off the hook there.
Fair enough, but we haven't voted on including that line just yet. So I take your point, but we might come back to it. I think we need to talk to Mary about the recent developments, first of all, to clarify to Fiona's point before we go to David and Kenneth's points. Mary, please.
I'll keep this short. So basically the recent developments involve the Planning and Environmental Court, so it's technically meant to be both. I'm sorry, it's a division within the court, but it's essentially a court. So with that recommendation, I think if the government saw that and were to abide by it, they would then create a similar one at the district and circuit court levels. So they probably wouldn't create a new one at the High Court, but there's no reason that you can't go and include that too. Does that answer enough, or do you have another aspect to that?
So we're just saying, is that to clarify, if there are High Court judges now, this recommendation is saying do this at circuit and district level as well?
Yes.
Okay. So Fiona, is that okay? Microphone.
Can I suggest that we make that very specific then, so that the government don't say, we did that, they've done it at High Court level, and we can say, the state must, in addition to recent developments on judicial, environmental and planning structures, for example, the state must implement environmental courts at circuit and district levels as well. Mary, would that capture what, I don't know.
So in addition to recent developments in judicial structures in environment and planning, the state must develop an environmental court or equivalent at
circuit and
district levels.
Yeah.
Okay.
To be fair, I think you could probably cut the or equivalent, because I'm the only sort of person who would go and be
Right.
persnickety and say or equivalent.
Grant. And take out High Court because it's already been done there.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So once we do that, now, okay. So without, in order to hold policymakers and citizens to account, that first change that's been made, all in favour, raise your hand. Okay, great. Now, to add in order to hold policymakers and citizens to account, all in favour, or to respond to that, should we add in policymakers, business and citizens to account? Okay, policymakers, what's a better line there? Businesses, okay, and citizens to account. Corporations. Okay, so now, all in favour of this point, to hold policymakers, businesses and citizens to account, all in favour of including that? Okay, and that's the room, and that's carried. Thank you very much. Now, we've hit an hour. Yeah. We definitely need a break.
Give it 15 minutes. We're due a coffee break at 25.
We're due, okay.
So, 15 minutes.
Okay, can we hold on for 15 more minutes until coffee break? Okay, should we just all stand up for a moment? This is what I would do with my first years. I would get them to like jump around or do like a little clap dance or something. Or Carl can sit down for a moment. Okay. Macarena. That's what you were going to do, Sabrina. I saw that. It's a good idea. If we had our guitars. Okay, this is work. This is good work. We're getting through it. Well done, everybody. Okay, we're on our strategy. This is great. I didn't think we would be getting this far. Okay. Any more strategy recommendations? Okay. Table 3 and table 11 and table 9 and table 7. Okay, I'm going to go to table 7 first, if we can get a microphone to Ailish.
Hi, just for S4, just if we could add in the increased biodiversity as well onto the end, just because it was highlighted, the pyramid to be,
For halting biodiversity and restoring biodiversity?
and then improving on top of that to go above and beyond to the next level.
Okay, so I think restoration does restoration not mean that, no? Improving it? Okay, sorry, no.
I'm just going based, on the triangle, where it's like just maintaining and then
So
above
for
to improve.
halting the biodiversity loss, restoring and improving biodiversity. That's
Something
the
along
suggestion.
those lines, yeah.
In S4. Okay, so a vote on including and improving. Or increasing, sorry. Sorry, Ailish. Enhancing. So for halting biodiversity loss, restoring and enhancing, increasing, improving. What word did you say? Enhancing?
Beyond and improve.
Okay. So table 4 is whispering, enhancing. We'll take a vote from the room. All in favour of including and enhancing? Okay, thank you. That's passed. Okie doke. Strategy. Sorry. Thank you.
As for as well, we wanted to insert word achievable in addition to ambitious.
Okay, so to have clear targets with achievable, ambitious
and achievable.
Ambitious and achievable timelines. Okay. All in favour of and achievable? show a show of hands. Okay, and against including that? Okay, so it's passed with ambitious and achievable timelines. Okay, other strategy, 9. Hilary, this is a yeah.
Sorry, and this is maybe a structural issue, so you can tell me whether it's misplaced or not. Just on S8, the consideration of the output from the Children and Young People's Assembly on biodiversity loss. Personally, I would like to see that up in the front table, the acknowledgement of their contribution and how seriously we're taking it. And, you know, so I think it should be put into the main recommendations that we listen to the children, and we should listen to the children because it's for them ultimately.
Okay, so all in favour of moving this from S8 and putting it into a 17th recommendation in that first section? Is that the suggestion, Hilary? Yeah, okay, so all in favour, show of hands, please. Wonderful, that's carried, so that's moving to 17 in the main recommendations. Okay, thank you. Any other strategy? Well done, everyone. Okay, great. So, fun and easy stuff of funding and economics. FE1 to FE7. Kenneth, table 10.
It's not as controversial as the last one. FE5, the state and central bank should introduce a lower green rate for loans that fund biodiversity initiatives.
Okay. I'm just going to ask, can we, as a Citizens' Assembly, recommend that the central bank do something? If I look to the bank. The central bank doesn't give loans, apparently, so... Hold on a second, Kenneth.
Who regulates the banks? That's where I'm coming from, to make sure that on the rate of loans.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the central bank doesn't give loans, but it does regulate the banks. So, but I mean, I think the state is probably big enough an infrastructural machinery to carry that particular amendment. I don't think it benefits from the inclusion of central bank.
That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, but that's
enough. To be able to
it's enough.
On what the recommendation is looking for.
Okay. Kenneth, with that response in mind, are you happy with that? That saying the state is big enough for that?
Yeah. Loans. As long as there is that we'll be able to get green rate loans in the future.
And we can include that in the text to this section, that we can say that by the state we mean those who are giving the loans. Okay. Thank you. FE1 to FE7, table 5, please.
Thank you. Hi, we just had for FE4 to, instead of contribute, say enhance.
Okay, thanks, Jean. So planning levies should include, sorry. Am I reading the right one? Sorry. Planning, to enhance. Is that the suggestion, Jean? Okay, so all in favour of including to enhance biodiversity? Okay, thank you, that's carried. Did I see a hand there? Yeah, table 8.
Hiya, it's just for FE7. So it currently reads funds raised through all renewable energy production, and we just think it should be funds raised through all energy production for biodiversity.
Okay, so take out, the state should ring fence a percentage of funds raised through all energy production for biodiversity conservation measures. Yeah. Okay? To agree with deleting renewable, all those in favour raise your hand. Okay, passed, thank you. Okay, FE1 to FE7. Table 4, please. Thank you.
Yes, sorry, just on FE2, FE3, sorry. The state should significantly increase commitments and long-term funding with specific and targeted tax incentives and tax breaks to incentivise and support the regenerative economy, green technology, biodiverse activities.
Thank you, Keith. So it's to include the wording with specific and targeted tax incentives and tax breaks. Okay? Okay. So all in favour of this addition to FE3, raise your hand. Okay, thank you. Then that's passed. Okay, FE1 to FE7, table 9.
Just on FE7, the state should ring fence a percentage of funds raised through all energy production for biodiversity conservation measures. I just don't know why we specifically target the energy industry here, and I think we've already said elsewhere that we should have dedicated budgets, etc., 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 to biodiversity. So I'm not sure this is what this is adding.
So are you suggesting it be deleted, Hilary?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see what it adds, and again, I'm just focused on the fact that if we keep saying the same thing as you read through a document and you're saying, oh, that was said already, it just gets a bit repetitive and less powerful.
Okay, there may be merit in pointing to a specific industry, but your motion is to delete FE7, so all those in favour to delete FE7? And all those against? So it stays in. Thank you for the suggestion. Okay, FE1 to FE7. Table 8.
Sorry, so just one more amendment to FE4. We think it should say planning levies should include a ring-fenced contribution to enhance biodiversity.
So a ring-fenced
contribution.
So to include the wording of ring-fenced.
Thank you.
All those in favour? And those against? Emma, can you speak to what ring-fenced means in this regard? I'm asking because it looked like it was a 50-50 there.
Yeah, it is. It does seem 50-50. I think what we mean, or what we meant, is that like a designated portion of the planning levies should, without a doubt, be used to enhance, rather than just a blasé contribution. Like that could mean, like a big company could contribute $1 million to it, or like a small housing might only do 100,000. Whereas like a definitive, this is what it should be, maybe across the board.
Okay. I wonder, Marcus, would you have anything to say to that? Perhaps if it's wording issue, it might be.
Yeah, I think that's been the problem with a lot of levies, is that, you know, in the good times, a lot of money can go to it, but of course after a while it diminishes. So proportional ring fencing is definitely something that should be done, and not just to enhance, but also to conserve and restore biodiversity. But again, it's one of those things which is a political issue. You're not going to be in trouble over it.
Okay, so that's a suggestion to say proportional ring fence, which maybe looks to developments being very large or very small. So,
a proportion or a percentage. If you look at like the carbon tax, how that can be influential in creating transport infrastructure, in public infrastructure, but yet the more people who use, the more carbon goes down, the less tax there will be levies to come.
So would table 8 like to suggest this wording or a different wording? And Mary, I'll come to you then after that.
I think we're happy to suggest that wording.
The proportional ring-fenced contribution. Okay, Mary, you have a comment on that?
Sorry, just to clarify for people, there are two different aspects to that. The proportionate or set amount is about the quantity, and that's very important as a consideration. The other bit is the ring-fenced, and ring-fenced I took to mean something entirely different from what you then said. Ring-fenced means that it's used for that specific purpose. So it's emphasising that it is to be used only for biodiversity. And proportionate ring-fencing merges both of those, so you are voting on two separate things there in it. So just to be aware of that. They're both important, they're both relevant, but it's two separate questions there.
Okay, so with that in mind, table. Sorry, Marcus.
If you move the ring fence to the other side of contribution, so your proportional contribution ring fence.
So table 8 then. Are you happy to go with planning levy should include a proportional contribution to ring fence No, ring fenced to conserve and enhance biodiversity.
Yes, I think we are, yeah. Thank
Okay,
you.
so a proportional contribution, ring fenced to conserve and enhance biodiversity. Now, with that in mind, are the room in favour of this changed wording? Okay, wonderful. That's passed. Thank you. And now it's time for coffee. Well done, everyone. We did well. We did well. That was good. That was good. I'll come back with a plan after 15 minutes.